Hey there, citizen detectives. Welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. This is going to be my Yellowjackets Season 3, Episode 3, titled Them's the Breaks. Spoiler, breakdown, review, recap, things you missed. Everything included in here. So again, if you guys aren't familiar, if you didn't watch the other two episodes that I've already covered, this will have spoilers. So make sure that you have watched the episode, or unless you don't care about that, before you go any further. And if you guys are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give this video a thumbs up. And without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this thing, because holy shit, we have a lot to talk about. So the episode opens up in the cave with Mari and Coach Ben. Mari is singing Right Said Fred's I'm Too Sexy, which I thought was kind of funny just to open things up. And then Coach Ben comes over, brings a bat and says, hey, you should eat some of this. She says how she's always had a crush on him. He ends up coming out and telling her, hey, I'm gay, but even if I wasn't, I would rather take a dull object and push it into the back of my skull than touch you. And I was just like, damn, Coach Ben, that is savage. Mari then grabs the bear spray that Coach Ben has, sprays Coach Ben, but then also sprays herself. What are you doing, Mari? After the intro, we then go to modern day where we see Van. She's at the doctor's office and not dead like some people thought. There was a theory out there that maybe she was actually dead this whole time, and so we get to acknowledge now that that is not the case. She is, in fact, very well still alive. While she's at the doctor's office, though, she gets the news that the cancer has stopped spreading. And I thought this was maybe going to be the case, and I'm sure other people did too. I know I'm not the only one that thought that. But I thought that was going to be the case at the end of Season 2, that miraculously her cancer would just kind of stop spreading due to the sacrifice that happened. And so we see that she gets that news here. Then we go to Shauna and Callie, and Shauna asks her daughter what her and Lottie were talking about. But then at that moment, Lottie ends up coming into the kitchen, and Shauna turns to her and says, hey, we should maybe get some lunch later. But Lottie tells her that she actually already has some plans while she looks at Callie. And so clearly they already have some plans to hang out. Not looking good, Callie, not looking good. Don't do it. We then see Misty call Shauna, and she says that she has some important information that she has to share with her, so they should meet up later on. But Shauna tells her that she shouldn't even be talking to her because she messed up last night. And once again, just Shauna specifically treating Misty like shit. We then go back to the 90s timeline where we see Ben helping Mari clean out her eyes, and Ben asks her what her plan is, and he then starts reflecting on how he got here, asking if this is all real, and then he starts hearing this weird noise and asks if Mari can hear it, and she can hear it as well. What is it that is making the noise? I know we heard that last episode as well. It was the trees, but what exactly is it? And then Mari starts telling about her little cousin having brain cancer, and she was with her when she died. I thought this was a nice humanizing moment for the character, because I feel a lot of the time she can be a character that is very easy to hate. So I thought that was a very nice moment for her here in this episode. And then Ben ends up asking her why she told him that, and Mari says she thinks there's maybe two versions of reality. What do you guys think of that? I feel like that's some important information that's going to play into further episodes. And then Mari asks what his plan is for how long he's planning to keep her there. We then go back to the modern day where we see Lottie and Callie hanging out, they're shopping, and Lottie tells Callie to tell her who she really is. You can really tell that Lottie is starting to get into Callie's head. She ends up convincing her to steal a dress, but you see the reaction in Callie's face. She loves the thrill of things just like her mom did. Then from there, we see Misty and Shauna. They end up meeting up like Misty wanted to tell her the information, and she explains how Callie is really a schemer because she set up this whole thing, truth and dare, to try and get more information out of them. But Misty tells Shauna that she actually was doing a whole reverse psychology kind of thing and told Lottie that if she ended up saying anything to Callie, that she would tell Shauna to throw her ass out. So I do give Misty a little bit more credit, because I thought in the previous episode that she was maybe fooled a little too easily. I still think with the drinking thing maybe a little bit too easily there, but I do give her some credit compared to last week. I was like, that seems out of character for Misty. Then Shauna ends up asking Misty why she had her meet her here, and Misty says basically she just misses hanging out with the girls. And again, you can just see that Misty she just wants friends. She's lonely. And once again, Shauna just tries to blow her off. From there, then we jump to Ty, who's reading about the death of the waiter, and in the article it mentions how the waiter had a mother and then a couple siblings. Now, my question is for you guys, because I feel like when they focus on any of that kind of information, it's for a specific reason. So do you think that any of the siblings are someone already in the Yellowjackets' lives that maybe they know? And have Van ends up telling Ty that the cancer has stopped spreading, and Ty tells Van about the waiter in return. And so do we think that the waiter's sacrifice has something to do with the cancer stopped spreading? In my opinion, I definitely think that's the case. I think it was another sacrifice that the wilderness wanted. I definitely think that's the case, and tells Van to accept that possibility, and then she starts chanting, "We hear the wilderness and the wilderness hears us." Something I want to point out, one of you guys in the comments had actually brought this up, which I thought was very interesting, that specifically in these past couple episodes, Ty has been around a lot of fire. She lights a match here again. And so you guys think that that maybe has something to do with, maybe it was the other version of Ty that ended up lighting the cabin on fire. And so I definitely think that's a very interesting theory. And again, we see fire playing a big part in this episode. Then jump back to the 90s real quickly, where we see Coach Ben. He decides to cut Mari's ropes. Now initially, she sees the knife. She thinks that he's going to come over to kill her, but cuts the ropes. He's really trusting her here, and as soon as that happens, she runs away, knocks him down. Yeah, that's probably going to be a big mistake, Coach. Then we jump back again to the modern day, where we see Shauna and Misty. They're driving in the car. When Shauna goes to use the brakes, however, the brakes are not working, and ends up swerving all over the place, goes into a playground, almost hits some kids as Limp Bizkit starts playing. I was like, oh, what a song choice to have here. They finally get the car to stop. Now, as they stop, Shauna thinks that this was Misty, that she cut the brake line. She just did this because she's psycho. And finally, Misty, I think, has had enough, and she says, you know, you're not a good friend. You're not the friend that I deserved. She gets pissed and she leaves. And I was sitting there thinking in that moment, you go, girl. You tell her. Who do you guys really think did that? You think that it was possibly Hilary Swank, who we think is playing Melissa in the modern day, or do we think that it was someone else? Then back in the 90s, we see Shauna and Melissa sitting there, and Shauna says something along the lines to Melissa of, now, you're not going to turn out to be boring now, are you? And I just thought this line was interesting, because do we think that Shauna actually has any feelings for Melissa, or is this just one of those situations where it's exciting to her? Then Mari comes back to the group, and Shauna asks her where she was, but she doesn't mention Coach Ben at first until Shauna starts questioning her how she got out of the hole, and then she admits that Coach found her, and you can see Naz just sitting there like, fuck. Then as Mari tells them he took her to this cave that he's been living in, the group runs with that, although Mari could have very well said that he had let her go and doesn't. And then Shauna also ends up calling out Nat, saying she doesn't want them to find him. I definitely think that we're starting to see a shift in power maybe to Shauna now at this point. Then after that, we end up seeing Lottie. She goes over to Akilah and says, hey, you should stay behind with us and you should try connecting with it. But at this point, Akilah wants nothing to do with that. We jump back again into the modern timeline where we see Shauna. She comes home, she sees Callie and Lottie dancing in the kitchen, and when she goes in there, she sees that Callie has Jackie's necklace on, and naturally she freaks out. Where did you get that? Lottie tells her that she's the one that gave it to her. How the hell did you get that? And it's at that point Shauna has just finally had enough and tells Lottie to get the hell out of her house, which about damn time, because I'm just surprised that up until this point, Shauna actually let her stay in that house. And then I love the cut that we have here. It goes to Ty and Dan. They're watching TV, and Ty says, God damn, this show is weird. And I just thought that was a hilarious reference, not only obviously to the show that they're watching, but Yellowjackets in general, because we see some weird shit, specifically in this episode. Now, as they're watching the TV, they have an ad that pops up and says the land of make-believe. Now, could that be a reference to what happened in the 90s, the wilderness timeline? Because I know up to this point, the show has done a pretty good job of kind of walking the line of, is this maybe all in their head? Is it part of the trauma that they dealt with? Or was there actually some supernatural elements in play out there? I think more this season, it seems to be they're starting to lean more towards there were some supernatural elements out there for sure, but I thought that that was an interesting little tidbit there. And then right after that, Ty ends up seeing another ad, and this one, it's an ad for Ozzy's ice cream, but the man with no eyes is in there, and so she freaks out, and her and Van decide that they have to go check out this place. Then we jump back into the 90s again, where we see Mari. She's trying to lead the group back to the caves where Coach Ben is, and Shauna is oddly encouraging in this moment, but it's definitely for her own gain. It's funny because in the modern timeline how she thinks that Lottie is this master manipulator, but Shauna is quite the manipulator herself as well. Shortly after that, they then end up finding the cave, but Misty is kind of hesitant to actually want to go in, and Nat says to the group, we don't have to actually go in there, but then it's Akilah who speaks up and says, yes, we do, and then at that point, they start hearing that weird screaming noise again. Then quickly jump back into the modern day again, where we see Ty and Van. They end up pulling up to Ozzy's ice cream place, where it is completely abandoned. It looks like it's been run down for years, and so they go inside, and I just got to point out with this episode specifically, some really creepy moments here, some horror elements for sure, which I loved. I'm a big horror fan, but yeah, this whole end of the episode was actually pretty creepy. And so as they're exploring the place, they go through and then they see a hole in the window and end up finding there's an animal outside that has a rabbit in its mouth. And Ty says, what do you want? And Van ends up saying it wants more, referring to the wilderness, wanting possibly another sacrifice. So who do you guys think could possibly be next? I know there's been interviews out there saying that there is multiple deaths in this season, so who else do you guys think that we are going to be losing this season? In the 90s timeline, the group, they end up start going into the cave, and when they get to a point, there are two paths. Now, one of them is a devil's bluff, as Misty refers to it, referencing The Princess Bride, one of the movie I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but references a specific movie, and so the two groups decide to split up. One of them is Shauna, Akilah, and Van. They go on one side, and as they're going through, this scene specifically had me feeling very claustrophobic. I wanted nothing to do with it. It gave me vibes of The Descent. If you guys have seen that movie, if you haven't, definitely check that out. That is a pretty scary movie. But yeah, as the group, they're making their way through, and they eventually get to a point where it kind of opens up. But then at that point, we see the flame flicker, and when that happens, we see first Akilah disappears, and then Shauna disappears. Van's by herself, and then she sees a door in front of her, which never a good sign, but nevertheless, Van ends up going inside, and when she does, she's inside this cabin. She goes over, sits in front of the fire, and we see the flames dancing in front of her eyes, which I feel like has some significance. Like I said, a lot of fire this so far in this season. And then shortly after that, as she's sitting there, all of a sudden you see a bunch of arms come wrap around her, and I'm pretty sure you see some of them have Yellowjacket varsity jackets on, and so I'm wondering, are those the people that we've lost in this season, or we've lost in the show so far? Then we go to Akilah, and I knew at this point something was odd because the way that it was filmed, it kind of looks like one of those dream sequences, just with kind of being blurry on the edges. We see Akilah, she's picking some berries, and all of a sudden she runs into a fucking talking llama that says, everything defends itself, or everything bites, everything will defend itself. And then at that point, Akilah, she starts sinking into the ground, and it was either right before or right at that moment. The llama also says, either way, it's going to get what it wants. Very creepy stuff here. After that, then we end up seeing Shauna, and she's having her dream sequence hallucination where she's in the water, and all of a sudden you see a boy on the other side, and pretty sure that is her kid, if the kid had survived, because it says, Mom, Mom, and so she starts to try swimming over there, and then all three of them ending up in the same dream where they're in a classroom. We see Lottie at the very front, and she says something along the lines of, this is the only dream, or this is one dream. And we end up seeing the man with no eyes. He ends up walking by, and right behind Lottie on the chalkboard behind her, it says, of all the ways to lose a person, death is the kindest way. Then at that point, we see Jackie. Jackie's in this hallucination, and she's playing with one of those wrist slap bracelets from the 90s. If you guys grew up in that time, I know they used to be around all the time, so I thought that was cool to see those. Van ends up asking if she can have it, so she throws it over to her, and she tries it on her wrist, but when she does, it ends up cutting her. And then right after that, I can't remember if Shauna asked for it or if it just somehow the bracelet ends up going over to her, wraps around her neck, and starts cutting into her, so she's bleeding everywhere and choking her. And I was like, holy shit, what is going on right now? And then at that point, they all end up waking up, and you find out because Coach Ben comes over and says, there's some weird gas in here. And then at that point, Nat comes in, points the gun at Coach Ben and says, hey, you're coming with us. And so, holy shit, guys, what an insane episode I thought this was. There was a lot happening here. I'm starting to think that maybe Coach Ben is not going to make it out of this timeline just because of the situation that he's in now. I don't know what you guys think, but yeah, his chances, I feel, aren't looking too good now that the girls have found him. And so, yeah, there's a lot to discuss here. I can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts. I hope the audio for this video, again, I thought I had fixed it, but I think there are still some issues, and so I'm going to have to try and get a different mic. I don't know what's going on, but it's driving me nuts. So I apologize for any issues with the audio. I tried my best, and like I said, I'm recording this later than I usually do, and so just trying to get this up for you guys as soon as possible, and hopefully by the time the next episode comes out, I have that all situated. But again, just, yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. I want to hear your thoughts, theories, everything that you want to talk about the episode. It's been so fun discussing these first two, well, now it's going to be 3 episodes with you guys so far, so I really appreciate it. And if you guys can, give this video a thumbs up, as it really helps out the video. I appreciate all your guys' support. As always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat, and I will see you soon.